Over the last 14 weeks, I've lost 40 pounds of body weight whilst working a busy city job in London, building a business on the side, and in general, just having non-physique and non-bodybuilding related goals that I need to dedicate a lot of time to. And that led me to needing a training split that doesn't take very long, doesn't take many hours out of my life, and I'm going to share that with you today. But just a bit of social proof. This is me on the right hand side, of course the before picture being the one on the left. I weighed 237 pounds here. Not exactly the picture of health that you'd imagine. Sure, I was very strong, but my diet was atrocious. I was eating donuts, cookies, squares bars to kind of maintain this body weight. And walking up the stairs was a struggle. I'd get out of breath walking up the stairs. I wouldn't fit in my suits at work, and I kept ripping the suits. So not only did I look stupid, I also cost myself a lot of money. And then on the right hand side is me, not very long later, around 14 weeks later, weighing 197 pounds, so 40 pounds down. A lot healthier in terms of cardiovascular ability, but I was also a lot stronger than I was on the left, which is a bit of a strange thing to see. A lot of the times when you lose 40 pounds of body weight, you're a lot weaker. But in the way that I set up my training, the way that we allocated volume, the way that we allocated frequency in line with my nutrition plan as well, we actually managed to get stronger. And that's what I'm going to show you in the next few slides, is how we set up that training. Something again that's really beneficial too is just how time efficient this split is. I wasn't spending any longer than an hour in the gym 4 times a week. And of course, importantly, every session was kind of based on science-based principles that we know work and they're tried and tested. We're not just kind of chucking random things at the wall and seeing what happens. We're not doing the whole bro science approach. Everything here is science-backed and proven. Most importantly as well, we made sure the whole process was enjoyable. There was no kind of like boring, like single arm cuff, lateral, pull down, row, rear delt, fly things. Things like that, sure, I'm sure they work, but they're very boring and they prove no interest to me. So there's none of that here. Most of the training is purely around getting stronger at exercises that we enjoy, making sure that we progress week in, week out, regardless of body weight being lost. So just a few principles. The training fundamentals here is that every exercise we did was 0 reps in reserve, but we didn't take forced reps. And 0 reps in reserve, I mean not failure, but essentially when you know that this is the last rep that you can complete on your own without having assistance or you're going to fail the next rep, that's when you stop. So it's not failure, but it's just shy of failure. Rest periods, I typically throughout the split just went for as long as possible, obviously within the constraints of your time. But you want your heart rate to return as close as possible to resting or normal in terms of being able to go into your next set and perform at a high standard. So that's rest periods. Every session as well, I tracked my exercises on rep count. If you haven't got that, it's an app that you can input your weights, reps, sets, track your volume and progression weekly. And that's crucial really to make sure that we're maintaining muscle throughout a diet and that we're not kind of slacking in terms of strength or progression. And in terms of like performing the exercise, of course, as you probably already know, we want an explosive concentric, driving that bar as fast as possible in the concentric, and then a controlled eccentric on the way back. Nothing really that we benefit from in terms of growth from being controlled in the eccentric, but more from just a safety and standardization point of view. Having a controlled eccentric is always going to be a benefit. And that explosive concentric needs to be occurring because for hypertrophy to occur, we need that bar speed to slow down. And obviously the more that we can be explosive in that concentric, the more we can see that change in rep speed as we go close to failure. It is essentially what we want really, to know that we're training hard enough to warrant some adaptation. So those are the principles that I want you to take into the training. So we start with day 1, which is upper A. Both upper sessions follow a relatively same structure, starting with the pressing, going into a pull work, a lateral raise, and then a bicep and tricep movement. But essentially what we're doing here on the first movement is choosing a stable press that kind of biases that top line here, which is what we're really looking for, right? We want that men's physique, Greek god look, right? So it's wide shoulders, very full upper chest, very full top line. So focusing on incline movements that also converge as well and that are stable, things that we want. So you'll see in the picture here, this is the press that we chose, very stable, converges a little bit at the top and gets heavier as we kind of contract the pec, which is ideal for a first press. And then our second press is a little bit more top line and anterior delt focused, going into a shoulder press. The neutral grip allows us to bring in a little bit more of the upper pec, and that's kind of our pressing work done. We only need 4 sets really across the chest and the delts. And then we go into our pulling work, the single arm machine pull down, really allowing us to focus on getting that lat short at the start, bringing our elbow in front of the body and down into the hip, really to maximize that engagement through the lat. And then once we've done there, we can go into our supported machine row. Again, very stable, allows us to brace into the pad and really kind of utilize the entire back musculature. And we do 2 sets there. Most of the stuff we do is 2 sets, to be honest, working a rep range of between 5 and 10. Some of them we do go up to 12, but as a general rule, you want to be as low as possible in terms of reps, where you still feel safe and happy to do so in that range. Chest supported machine row, we box that off, go straight into a lateral raise machine. Again, thinking about driving those wrists into the corner of the room and really shortening that delt as much as possible. And then again, there's the same concept with a preacher curl, right? You want to shorten that bicep and lengthen that bicep as much as possible under tension and progress that every week. Dip machine, again, maximizing that range of motion, making sure we get a really good stretch on the tricep as well as shortening it as we contract and press down. So that's day 1, upper A. Lower A is the second day. We start off with a calf raise, just because if you leave it at the end, you're going to neglect it, or you're just not going to bother at all. Putting it at the front means that you can kind of spend some time actually prioritizing your calves, and it's not going to take away from the rest of your session. The same with a hamstring curl. If you put the hamstring curl first, it's probably not going to take away from your hack squat. In fact, it's probably going to improve it. You'll get a little more out of the stretch reflex in the hack squat if your hamstrings are kind of warm rather than cold. And again, it's just a way of like warming up the knees indirectly and making sure that everything's safe. Again, the same kind of concept with the leg extension. We're getting the quad short, which we know is important at the start of a session, but also warming up the knee ready for that hack squat. We only have 1 hack squat set, and it's a heavy hack squat set. So we want to make sure that we're pretty warm and we're going to be safe throughout that 1 set that we have here. And it's a lower rep range as well. So we want to make sure that that's both safe to do and effective. And then once we've boxed off the hack squat, we're into our leg press, 2 sets of 8 to 10. Again, following the same concepts of training very close to failure, making sure we progress the sets week to week on every movement essentially, but of course the heavier, more complex movements are the ones that you want to see the most progression on. So this hack squat and leg press is something we really want to drive up across the weeks. Day 3 is another upper session, following a very similar kind of structure as upper A. Again, we're starting with a press. Here it's a flat Smith press. Again, a heavy movement that we can progressively overload over time. And then the only difference here is we have a pec fly rather than a shoulder press, just to get a little additional chest volume. Like my chest is quite weak compared to my delts, I'd say. So we've just kind of switched out a shoulder press here for a pec fly. If your shoulders are a weak point, you might want to reintroduce a shoulder press instead of the pec fly here. And then we've got a wide pull down, just working the lat for a different plane, and an upper back row, so elbows nice and high. Here we've opted for a T-bar row. This is a horrible T-bar row. Very heavy, but nevertheless gets the job done. And then again, we've just got a different cable lateral raise variant, just to add a bit of variation between upper A and upper B, and just kind of increase that time between when we revisit a movement, just to allow for perhaps a little more adaptation between upper A and upper B, to then go back into upper A again and drive that progression into the movement. And then from there we have cable curl, tricep push down. Again, the same concept as the lateral raise, a slight variant of up A that still allows for adaptation session to session, but we're not fatiguing one movement as such. And then day 4 is lower B. We start with an adductor. Something that's kind of overlooked in non-bodybuilding is actually growing your adductors. They're quite a large part of your leg and responsible for a lot of mass in the upper leg. So if you can get strong at these, you'll have quite good looking legs. And the same concept again, seated hamstring curl first. It's not going to take away from your training. If anything, it's going to warm you up and make you more prepared for your heavy sets. And you'll notice as well, we go into an RDL as our main movement for this session. So it's just a little more posterior focused. Here we're kind of focused on driving the glutes through the bar. And again, we're just looking for nice micro progression week on week on this, as essentially that's how we're going to maintain our muscle. Following that, we have 2 sets of the leg press. So only 2 sets of direct quad work on this session, but again, it's more than enough in the context of the fact that we're hitting quads twice a week. We're hitting them very specifically and in a way that they're targeted for growth. And then after that, we go into a calf raise, 2 sets of 6 to 10. Something I like to do with calf raise sets is just spend a little more time in the stretch. So when you get to the bottom of your movement, maybe pause for 3 seconds or so before going back into the concentric. This has been kind of proven to actually exhibit more growth than perhaps just a continuous up and down, no pause at the bottom. So that's a little tip there. And that's kind of boxed off the whole upper lower split. It's a very, very quick, efficient split, but that's how it should be. There's no need for any additional volume here, because if we're progressing every set that we have, there's no way we're not growing muscle. That muscle has to be growing for a reason, and it's because the body needs to adapt to being stronger. So if you're getting stronger, you're growing muscle. that can't be argued. You don't need to be getting a pump. You don't need to be doing tons of supersets, tons of volume, tons of drop sets. All that's going to do is just exhibit more muscle damage and take away what we're trying to do, which is signal to the muscle that it needs to grow and it needs to get stronger. So that's the split. If you want to learn a little bit more, I do have a free 5-day shred blueprint, and it's the exact strategy I used to lose 40 pounds in 14 weeks. I know we've just covered training, but we cover training a little more. We cover the diet, we cover how we introduce expenditure across the 14 weeks, the routine that we kind of put in place across the 14 weeks, as well as a few freebies along the way. There's a few kind of bonus bits of content in there, including like the supplement stack that I use. If you want to access that, there's a link in the description that will take you to the sign up page, and you'll get that over a 5-day email course. And that's that really. Hopefully you found this useful. If you did, please hit the like button, give us a subscribe and leave a comment down below. And if you haven't already, check out the Instagram page. There's daily actionable tips over there that can really help you in your training, especially if you're a busy guy in a city that doesn't have much time on his hands, but you really want to improve your physique. There's a lot of stuff over there that I take from my day-to-day experiences and kind of package into a carousel or a reel to share with you guys. So if you haven't done already, head over there, give this a like, and I'll see you in the next video.